All right, we have been talking about the Torah. It is step 6. You will find all of this information in Yeshua's path. And under step 6, the other thing that I wanted to point out to you is there are a lot of people who object to this understanding of Scripture. And they have passages in the Scripture that they point to that are interpreted in an anti-Torah way, and they say that this means that we're not supposed to be doing the Torah anymore. If you go into Appendix 3 in this same book, I go through just about all of those passages. If you have a passage, it's probably in there. And I look at each of those passages and show you the anti-Torah interpretation and the Torah observant interpretation. And so then it's up to you to decide which interpretation has the most weight. So if you have one of those objection passages in your head, that's where to go to look it up to see if there's another interpretation that would fit what we're talking about here. All right, today I wanted to talk about the 4 essential responsibilities of the Torah. And this is found in Exodus 34:25 through 26, 2 little verses. It's also mentioned in Exodus 23:18 through 19. So this is repeated. Whenever something is repeated, that means that it's important, or more important. And it reads like this: "You shall not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leavened bread. Neither shall the fat of my sacrifice remain until the morning. The first of the first fruits of your land you shall bring into the house of the Lord your God. You shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk." Now, Exodus 34, where this is taken out of the middle of that, is talking about the Torah, all kinds of different aspects of the Torah. And so we derive from that these phrases are telling us something about the Torah. And in fact, they are. And Paul organizes chapters 12 and 13, which dealing with the Torah, according to these 4 phrases. There's 4 major sections in these 2 chapters, and they correspond to these 4 topics. At the beginning of these 2 chapters, it says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God, which is your reasonable service." So what he's saying is that the sacrifices are somehow symbolic of our responsibility toward the Torah. When he says your reasonable service, he's talking about the responsibility that we have toward the Torah. Now here's the question. We're supposed to follow the Torah. We are in the Romans level, which is the beginning level. You're not expected to learn the entire Torah and do the entire Torah right up front at the beginning. Okay? It's very complicated, takes a long time. So you start out small, okay? But at this point, you're not even expected to know what is in the Torah. And yet, you are called upon at this time to submit yourself to the Torah. You're supposed to say, okay, I will accept the Torah. How can you accept something if you don't understand what's in it? Okay? Well, these 4 phrases is going to explain uh, the answer to that question. Because if you answer these 4 questions positively, then you will not have a problem with any of the commands that you run into as you go through the Torah. Okay. Now let's look at the questions that these phrases pose. Okay. The first phrase, you shall not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leavened bread. Leaven is talking about sin. And so it's saying that we're supposed to be holy to God. We're supposed to be righteous. We're not supposed to be divided in our affections towards God. And so holiness means that you're not going to have any idolatry, and ultimately you're not going to have any sin. So is there anything in your life, an idol, a sin, an interest? Is there anything that you would not give up in order to follow God? If there is, then you are going to have a problem with the Torah, because the Torah expects that we will devote everything to God. Okay, number 2. Neither shall the fat of my sacrifice remain until morning. This is very time-oriented. And what this is saying is that, are you going to devote your time to God? Okay? We are supposed to be a waiter. We wait on God. And when His time comes to do something, we need to be available at that time. We can't have certain times devoted to ourselves, in other words, where we're not available to God. Okay, number 3. The first of the first fruits of your land you shall bring into the house of the Lord your God. This is talking about God's ownership. God owns everything in your life. Is there any property that you would not give to God? Okay, that's if there is, there's a problem with the Torah. Number 4, you shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. This is a very strange phrase that comes at the end of the biblical diet. It summarizes the biblical diet. And the rabbis and Paul interpret this to mean that if you are careful about what you eat in the animal kingdom, then you will be doubly careful about how you treat other people, meaning that you will love other people. And so love is going to be required of you. Again, if you have a problem with love, then you're going to have a problem with the Torah, because Torah is summarized by love, and love is difficult, because we're not talking about loving those who love you. Everyone does that naturally. We're talking about loving our enemies. Okay, loving everybody. That is a little more difficult. Are you willing to learn to do that? Or are you going to hold that back? Okay, it's not something that's easy. It's not something that we can do on our own. But God can help us to do that if we are willing to give it over to Him. So these are the 4 phrases that as you go through the book, it gives you a lot of documentation on how I connect these phrases. What I did is I went into the Bible to look up these words to see how they're used in the Scripture in order to make the connection. And so the question is, are you going to commit to the Torah, knowing these 4 responsibilities. Now, these 4 responsibilities cover just about everything, and so there's not much left that the Torah can't take away from you, that these 4 responsibilities are not taken away from you. But so that is going to be your question that you need to answer in order to intelligently make a decision of whether you're going to follow the Torah or not at this point, when you don't even know what it all involves. Okay, so these 4 responsibilities are also mentioned in the in Yeshua's Sermon on the Mount. Devotion or holiness is mentioned in Matthew 6, 1 through 24. Being a waiter or a servant is in Matthew 6, 25 through 34. The ownership of God is Matthew 7, 1 through 11. And love for others is in Matthew 7, 12. So these 4 responsibilities are right there if you, care to read it. Okay, so I'm going to quit right there for the 4 responsibilities and let you read the documentation in the book. Are you going to be holy to God? Are you going to devote all your time to God? Are you going to devote all of your property to God? And are you going to allow God to love through you?